Welcome. Good morning and welcome to our focus group, our Musical Theater Educators Alliance focus group on invisible labor this morning. My name is Gwen Walker. I am an associate professor of voice at Penn State University. And I'm going to set the table for us, and then we're going to go around and introduce our fabulous panel and begin this important discussion. So, invisible labor. Invisible work is a term that was coined by Arlene Kaplan Daniels to describe the undervalued labor that women often do with nuclear households. And in educational spaces, this concept has been adapted to describe faculty involved in the invisible labor of diversity, equity, inclusion by women, people of color, and LGBTQIA plus faculty. So invisible labor may consist of student-initiated mentorship and guidance, emotional labor that is expected but not rewarded. And this type of good academic citizenship contributes to safeguarding and improving the quality and efficacy of academia. And women and faculty of color and other minority groups engage heavily in making academic institutions a better place, which prevents those groups from leaving. However, this kind of labor is largely unrecognized and is heavily burdened on assistant professors and those just starting their academic careers. And additionally, it takes time. It takes time to do this invisible work. And that time may keep faculty from having the time to pursue more visible forms of productivity like research and publication. And further, there is enormous emotional labor every day for faculty of color and non-male faculty. The academy is controlled by white men, encouraging white privilege systems that entrench and perpetuate social inequalities, that maintain white men as the default for scientific inquiry, objective observation, moral authority, work ethic, all the things. And faculty of color and non-male faculty are daily navigating a system that discriminates against them, where they may need to placate the egos of other faculty members who perceive them to be too much, too opinionated, too outspoken, or above their station. We've all heard talk about the leaky pipeline and experienced it, the great resignation in academia following the COVID-19 pandemic. And disparities in salary, promotion, and publication are obvious reasons why this occurs, but nearly a third of tenured female academics consider leaving academia every single year. But there isn't a lot of scholarship that focuses on the burden of invisible labor on women and faculty of color. And I just want to say before we begin that what the cost of that looks like, just speaking from my eye, personally, the constant juggling act of balancing invisible labor with the demands of my job takes a toll emotionally, physically, financially. And the burden of being an emotional backbone for the department, for colleagues, and sometimes entire organizations leads to burnout and health issues and isolation. And it's a slow and silent drain on my physical and emotional reserves, a slow death, if you will. And it's not dramatic and not immediately visible. But if you kind of like the pictures of the presidents before and after their terms, if you took a picture of me when I began in academia 20 years ago, and now you can see it, what that toll has had on me physically, mentally, emotionally. So we work really hard to recruit a diverse faculty where I work, and most of those people leave within a few years, and that costs so much money, right? It increases short and long-term costs. It negatively impacts the students and their education, and it makes it difficult for the department to achieve long-term goals. So that's my table setting. Somebody's mic is on, I think. Please turn off. Thanks. And here, I would like to go around and introduce my colleagues who've been so fabulous to join me today. I'm going to pin and add you, add spotlight. Oh, am I doing it right? There's David. Add spotlight. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. I'm not so adept at this. There we are. Could you unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves, please? Jeanmarie, why don't you go first?
Hi, my name is Jeanmarie Higgins, and I am a 50-something white woman with white shoulder-length hair, and I wear big gray horn-rimmed glasses. I am the chair of the Theater Arts and Dance Department at the University of Texas at Arlington, which is a city that's in what I think they call, oh, I don't know what they call, I just moved here, so it's like I'm not up on the lingo yet, but we are basically in the DFW area. So we have Fort Worth to our west, we have Dallas to our east, each one is about 20 minutes away. I'm at a large urban open access public university that is Hispanic serving, veteran serving, and is recently named a Research One university. We have over half of our students are first generation and college students, and our diversity reflects what you might think of in terms of the diversity of the country or the world, certainly our region. So when you're walking around UT Arlington, you feel like you're in a place with a lot of different kinds of people, ethnicities, ages, abilities. So yeah, can you tell I really love my institution? But that's me. That's my, and I come at the idea of invisible labor as a chair in understanding how to guide my predominantly white faculty with our incredibly diverse student body into service roles and opportunities that will advance their careers without overburdening them at the same time.
Marty, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marty Austin Lamar. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Theater and Dance in the College of the Arts at California State University, the Fullerton campus, which is a beautiful campus, one of the largest, if not the largest, within the CSU system. And my principal responsibilities are this year will be coordinating the BFA musical theater program along with my amazing colleague, Sarah Ripper. And so much like what Jeanmarie just said, Cal State kind of looks the same. It is an Hispanic serving institution with as of 2023, February 2023, I don't know what they are this year, but last year, with 50% of the student population is Hispanic. 22% identify as Asian or Pacific Islander, and 2.2% are Black. 0.2% of the student population identified as white. And then you had multi-ethnic students. And then other cultural communities that are represented there as well. I am the only African-American, only Black man on the faculty, and only one of two tenured track faculty within the entire college. The small percentage of Black tenured faculty, Black tenured faculty at Cal State are amazingly beautiful, intelligent, overly supportive and iconic Black women, 8, which represents a very, very, very small percentage of the tenured faculty. And, you know, as we gather and we talk about these kind of conversations, it's interesting to hear the continuity in our stories, that all of our stories and our journeys have been the same as we talk about invisible labor as we talk about cultural taxation. But beyond that, as we talk about just the basic day-to-day management of a systemically oppressive system that has not advanced itself beyond its founding principles of keeping folks out. And so it has been quite a journey. I'm going into I can't believe we're going into my 4th year here. And so, I'm excited for the conversation today. I really enjoyed reading the articles. I got up early this morning on the West Coast and saw that I had some articles and it was really, I had read a couple of them before, but it was good to go back and read them again. So I'm blessed to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Fabulous, David. Good morning.
Hi, everyone. Good morning to you all, or good day, wherever in the world you're phoning in from. My name is David Jiles Jr. I use he, him, his. I am a 40-year-old Black man with a very large beard and brother locks, and I am thrilled to be here. I'm an assistant professor in the voice department at Berklee College of Music, where I teach voice technique for singers, and also in our musical theater minor that's fairly new, and I'm celebrating 10 years there. And I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Emerson College up the road in Boston. Both of these colleges are in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm thrilled to have this conversation because I think Berklee is very unique as a college in that there are no tenure track positions. So most contracts are service to the college, and what that looks like is very much a part of anyone's promotion dossier here. And I've been I've been in a four-year experience with the powers that be at Berklee. So this conversation is something that I've this emotional labor, this invisible labor, I've definitely been zizzling in that hard for the last 4 years, and it's sort of having the experience at Berklee and Emerson and being able to compare the two experiences and also see where they are different. I'll start with that. I don't have the statistics, the accurate statistics of the student population at Berklee and Emerson, but I do know that Berklee calls itself a global campus, right? So it really celebrates this idea that our students are from everywhere and that they're sort of our equal proportions of that across the population, where in the performing arts department at Emerson, it's predominantly white students. And what that looks like as a Black queer professor in that population has been, it's something to talk about. So that's it. I'm excited to get into it with all of you all today. So I'll hand it back over to Gwendolyn, our moderator today.
Yeah, I'd love it if we could just keep ourselves unmuted so that it's kind of like we're at a table together, even though we're at opposite coasts. Thanks for getting up early, Marty.
I might mute a couple of times just because I live across the street from a train. So
okay. And if the mailman comes and my dog goes crazy, I may mute. So yeah. So I thought I'd just kick off our conversation by saying, how do we bury the paradigm of white male academics doing only their job, right? That thinking, publishing, extemporizing is the only job of an academic. and start to value and reward the new facets of educating today's populace in academia. There's a lot more to it now. Our students have a lot more mental health issues. If we identify in any minority, we are usually going to be counseling students. Students are going to come to us for help. There's a lot more to our job now than there used to be. And how do we change that paradigm?
I think it starts with changing how we have discussions about our differences. So like David, I've been blessed while I've been here to be a guest artist on other campuses. And one of those campuses, the first one that invited me was Fullerton College, a junior college that at that time, that amazing program was being led by another one of our colleagues, Tim, who is now at, he's not at Berkeley. Is he at Boston Conservatory? I can't remember. But anyway, Tim Espinosa. So he gave me an opportunity, as soon as I got here, offered me an opportunity to come and be a musical director for a production that we're doing. And it was so interesting to walk into a place and a space where service was at the forefront. Serving the students was the first concern, and you could tell. And even if that was just a small siloed experience for me, hearing from those students that that's also how they felt, right? Of course, that was not the experience of some of the faculty, specifically the faculty that represented the global majority and female faculty. And so it was interesting to be there and then to be where I am, where I think diversity is still a very new conversation. I think oftentimes diversity in higher ed has been in response to the cancel culture that was happening in 2019, 2020, 2021, where we saw some of our colleagues lose their jobs because they said something, did something that instead of the university taking the opportunity to have a discussion about it, to hopefully offer support and dismantle what you're talking about, when they use it as, I'm just going to speak freely, they use it as a way to crucify one person, typically a woman, crucify her, and then we'll bring new people in, we'll hire a few people of color, and now we're on the right track. Well, what you forget is that the students that are now being served come in having had multiple now decades of seeing violence, experiencing violence, and having to learn in modalities that none of us ever expected to have to operate. And so now you bring them to a level of dysfunction that is characterized by you sweeping all the stuff under the rug. And then every year, particularly if you're going through the tenure process, you see more and more of the things that were never resolved. And often it's because they don't know how to first speak about differences. So I don't use terms like minoritized groups, because minor and major, that this is what it is, right? So I say global majority, because from a global perspective, particularly white people, they represent a very small percentage of the world, particularly American white people represent a small percentage of the world, right? And then when it comes to male and female, well, we all got the memo about how to talk about gender, how to talk about how we, how students want to be referred to in a class space, particularly in an artistic space. But it's interesting to me how particularly white men in the academy, and I've experienced it because I've seen it, how that has been a challenge for some of them. Well, that perfect example, that I don't get the option to make those kinds of errors. I don't get the option, right? That could cost me, and it almost did at Cal State Fullerton. It almost cost me my professional career. Over 13 years of experience in higher education, and much of that being spent being very, very direct about teaching, serving at historically black colleges and universities. So 7 years at Howard University, coming in, having to go in and rebuild and having to fight for everything and find all the resources because they were not readily available, right? And then coming to a campus where, in my opinion, they have everything. It's the Taj Mahal, and the things that they spend their time talking about are the things that you're talking about, which in my opinion are easy conversations to have. So we were willing to just get in a room, have honest conversation to where you share, I share, your biases, my biases, where we are in a space where we feel safe enough to do that. I do believe we could then begin to move the paradigm forward. But that does not happen as long as we don't admit that either we have benefited from a systemically racist system, right? Or we have caused detriment to others as a result of navigating a systemically racist system. Happy Monday.
Thank you for that, Marty. My friends, response.
So the question was, how do we repeat the question, Gwen?
How do we bury the paradigm of white male academics doing only their job?
Yeah. So I have a very dull answer, and the answer, because I'm a chair, is policy. So like one of my big projects this summer is to quantify what is meant by certain service assignments. And so if there is a faculty member who says, oh yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example that everyone could relate to, especially in this space. I'm going to choreograph the musical, say. Okay, great. So are we doing On the Town, or are we doing March of the Falsettos? Like how much, what commitment might there be from that person? And so it really does get down to quantifying how much labor is put in by hours. And I literally do that, and to the best of my ability, and then write a description of what that course release entails in terms of time. Because the emotional labor of all of the care work related service that women and people of color do, one of the side effects of that, it isn't just that it takes your time, it's that it accelerates the pace at which you must work. And so that is terrible for people who create art, who write scholarship, who want to pay very close attention to a very individual student's needs in the classroom. So to me, time, yes. But I think the thing that we really have to talk about is the pace at which people of color and women are asked to work, because of so many reasons, but because people are looking for representation on a committee. So we have to have people of color on the committee, and then that person must be on 6 committees. And so that means that they have less time to grade their papers. That means that they have less time to write their articles, less time to do master classes. Like there's a lot of fallout in terms of pace. So the way that I am approaching this problem in my role, which is administrative and sort of, I consider kind of a service role, is to literally write it down so that if I need to have a conversation with someone about the lack of showing up there is, I can say, here's what this job entails. Or if someone is just really burning the candle at both ends, I can say, listen, this is what is required, and you're really working outside of this guideline. So let's talk about how we can compensate you for that, or how we can pull back from that. So my answer is administrative at this point in my career. Write it down, policy, policy, policy.
That people can point to and say, there's a policy for this. If I do this kind of job. Yeah, amazing.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Gwendolyn.
No.
But I'm 100% with Jeanmarie. I think, and I'm so grateful that there's someone who sits in a position of power in this conversation. Because, and there's the train. Uh, hopefully I don't lose the thought. But I think from my day-to-day, that's what it is. I often feel, no matter what I'm experiencing in terms of invisible emotional labor, it doesn't matter, because if no one in power sees that and knows what that labor is and consists of and sort of puts a value on that, then I'm batting my fist to the gods and saying, "Oh my goodness, work is so hard." And I think that to the article that we were reading with The Economist, right, and how this human was quantifying what it is, sort of that story around Thanksgiving, right? What your mom might do to make a Thanksgiving dinner. What are the hours? What's the work? And then how you would sort of value that in dollars and cents. I think that's the name of the game. It's policy changes. And one thing that I was, as Marty was speaking, I wrote down, I think one of the steps is for some group of folks, maybe that's us, writing out a list of what is this invisible labor, right? Day to day. What does that mean? Because I think if the goal is for our cis white men to be convinced, cajoled, or whatever the words are, to sort of come to the table, and not only come to the table, but enact change. I think us being able to say, it's like the document around COVID, We See You White American Theater, right? I feel like this was a really wonderful model of Black artists, Black folks in the theater industry coming together and saying, hey, we see you, and listing these grievances, and then saying, hey, here are some solutions. And I think one of the things that needs to be done in some sort of simple but direct way, y'all, this is what invisible labor looks like on the day-to-day for our folks who are not cis white men. And this is what that costs in hours, dollars, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's one of the big things here. Because for me, the invisible labor becomes mental labor, then for me has turned into mental unwellness, right? Which of course impacts my job. How could it not impact my job? Because we are doing a career that is human centered, human focused. So I am a human, right? It sounds so corny and simple, but I am a human, and the things that affect me in my humanness, right, will certainly come into the room. The number of times that as a Black queer man, I am holding space for other Black students, for other queer students. The number of times as a voice teacher, as a Linklater teacher, where I am so aware of, because I'm a large guy. I'm a former college football player. So my physical space, my physical mass becomes a thing in the classroom. And then to add on Blackness on top of that, I'll say it. It's that this invisible labor is me. It's inescapable for me because of to Marty's point, right? It's the systems that we teach in. They still are the system, these inequitable systems. So as a Black queer man, I don't know how my labor, what I'm doing day to day in the classroom right now, as everything exists, status quo, I'm constantly engaged in invisible labor. I've accepted that it is part of the experience, especially as an non-tenured faculty, and assistant professor who's on this quest to become full professor. all of my service, is to the college and in this invisible labor umbrella.
Yeah. Does anybody want to
Agreed.
respond? Yeah.
Yes, I think that we need to, we have our faculty needs to more and more reflect the diversity of our student body. I think that is another thing that will help a great deal, to just try to, whenever you have an opportunity, to achieve more diversity in the faculty, because that can over time solve a lot of the issues, a lot of the like systemic issues.
Marty.
And we have to be empowered to continue to hold institutions accountable. You know, we're living in a time where they are trying to literally erase the word diversity. What that does is it gives these institutions and it gives these systemically racist policies and procedures, particularly as they concern advancement in higher institutions, it gives them a get out of jail free card, where they say, well, we never have to consider the fact that Marty, like David, walks into a room with 14 white students, right? He's 6'5.5", weighs 278 pounds, and assume that they're going to be open to Marty's way of approaching the process of creating a character, the process of releasing voice. I'll never forget my first year at an institution. My first year at Cal State, I was accused of creating a culture of rape because I had a uniform policy. Now, this is what I have since learned, right? That oftentimes we give students all of this terminology, but we don't give them the understanding, the real definition of what these things mean. And all of a sudden, those terms become weapons where students are fighting against faculty. And what we're really fighting against are these policies and procedures that have not been ratified, that have not been amended, nor even discussed, right? And so all of a sudden we're in a battle for position, when at the end of the day, right, this is still should be an equitable classroom where both the student and the instructor feel safe. But how is that possible if like Jeanmarie has said, if like David has said, if there are no policies in place? How is that possible if you have all these different departments? Well, I'm the head of a department versus a coordinator. Like how do we begin to find any sense of normalcy when there is nothing on paper that holds anybody accountable for their implicit and explicit bias, which is what all of this basically comes down to?
Yeah. And I also think, thank you, Marty. One thought I had about EDI and JEDI work, when we started it as a sort of collective consciousness years ago,
or response.
It was for everyone, right? All faculty going to these same meetings. And I often felt, I'm like, this ain't my work. I shouldn't have to go to this class. I shouldn't have to choose this elective because I know about that. You know? And I often thought, this does sound a little more harsh than I intend, but I often have thought with EDI workshops, et cetera, that colleges and universities and schools bring folks in, and these are for the white men. These are for my boss should be up in this class, not me. I should be doing something else, having a vacation, getting my nails done or something, because I know that I not only do I know this, these workshops are often talking about my lived experience. And then even that creates invisible emotional labor, because often we sit in these workshops and then we're so mindful of taking care of the whole room. do I say this? Do I not say this? Because I'm mindful that if I say this thing, just like I just said right now, this might sound harsh, but I don't intend it. We're taking care of those folks, those cis white men who might be offended by what we say, who might be offended by my mere presence of taking up space and everything that means, right? But the mere fact that I might be thinking in draft or processing things in the way that I process, and what does that mean in terms of how I'm perceived, how I think I'm perceived. All of those things go into this idea of being a non-cis white man in the career that we're in, and what this umbrella of emotional labor, invisible labor, and I think it's exacerbated by the fact that we teach in the arts, right? Because we get certain types of students. We get students who tend to be more sensitive, who tend to be readily available and primed to be in an emotional awareness and all of those things. So, in the way I see that, it's that a lot of my students are yearning for care. Are sort of, it's easy for our jobs, or let me speak from a place of it's easy for my job to become, I'm a surrogate father figure. I'm a surrogate this, I'm a surrogate that. And when I'm Black, right, it's often the students who are from global majorities who don't see themselves, and I'm so happy that representation came up in our conversation, who don't see themselves or who don't see more of themselves in the classroom, in the material that we teach, in the way that we talk about the canon, right? I'm sort of remembering a workshop we did years ago, Gwen.
Oof.
Right?
Oof.
And the resistance, right? The resistance often from cis white men who are like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this radical idea. Yeah, it's
we almost had a riot in David's and my last presentation together because we were just challenging people's ideas of what was acceptable. And boy, oof. I just thank you for all of those thoughts, and my mind is spinning. I want to throw into the room that at my institution, I try to be a diversity leader. I am marginally successful at it because I am a woman, and people feel free to come for me, and it's a regular event. I was accused of anti-white bias a couple years ago. And I was accused of, telling white people they can't riff, which is not what I said. But I was also just accused of fat bias. I'm a chunky person myself. But there's just like, when I talk about diversity in front of a group of people, there is definitely going to be a call to the hotline, and I'm going to be called to the chair's office, and I'm going to have to sit down and talk about it. And so I am at the point in my career where I am trying not to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just yesterday mentioned something about how maybe if you're not Jewish, you shouldn't sing something from, one of Lucille's songs from Parade, and got in a little bit of trouble yesterday. So there's this idea that we want to promote diversity, and we want to push things, but until that policy, like Jeanmarie says, until there's a systemic change in the way I am protected, then, and you are protected in the way that you teach, then it will always be about you personally and not about the system.
Mm.
Can I just interject one thing, Gwen? And I want to sort of amplify what you're saying, that there is, and also some things that David and Marty have said, where the accusations against faculty have become just free-flowing and increasingly difficult to understand or locate. And so again, speaking as a chair in this space, what I'm working on, and my students have taught me how to do this, truly have taught me how to do this in the past year, to have a way to have conversations when a student says, so-and-so is, tells me that I can't sing a song by a Jewish character and that's racist, and goes to the chair and says, okay, this is what happened. To immediately, because the power the chair has in that situation is to bring the two parties together with equal status in a conversation about what each of them wants to get from the conversation. So you say to the student, what is your goal here? And if they need some prompting, do you just want this faculty member to listen to you? What do you want? Because what you're doing is you're challenging that student to say, well, I want them fired. When you're sitting at a table with them across the table in a nice conversation, and they don't do that when it's in that configuration, in my experience. So we've had a lot of difficult conversations last year that usually end with both the faculty and the students saying thank you and I'm sorry and thank you for listening, and moving on and strengthening their relationship as teacher and student. I mean, for real, like and my students are amazing, but they're probably not different from other students in this regard. You teach them how to resolve conflict by modeling it in a way that makes everyone feel safe and supported and important, and it works better than running a fire drill about it and letting the gossip go around and having separate meetings, unless, okay, this is for my dean, unless required by law, right? So, if I, obviously there's Title IX situations and there's, actual situations where students are in danger, that's different. But a lot of things can be solved by having a respectful conversation around a table where we say difficult things to each other and know that the other person's going to listen.
And if we don't figure out how to do that, what we do is we populate an industry. I've been on the stage most of my life, right? But I definitely remember my first encounter in New York when an agent came to me and said, listen, you're amazing, but you're too big. You need to lose 30 pounds. He wasn't being mean. He was a bald-headed white man. I'd never met him in my life, right? But he had bigger plans for my life than maybe what I understood at the time, being a recent graduate of an MFA program, right? And even during my MFA program, I had one of my mentor professors tell me that I needed to go to the gym. If I were to say those things now, y'all would see me on CBS sitting with Gail. Right? But the truth is, if we don't tell them while they are in the process of training and development, the challenges that come with being queer, the challenges that come with being Black, the challenges that come with being full-figured or plus size as both a male and female, right? The challenges of being transgender and someone saying, yeah, but you don't sound like a soprano. You're not an ingenue soprano. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. Then they learn it in such a toxic way where they are not protected. And again, that goes back to policy.
Yeah.
I had this, a student who's multi-ethnic. Her father is Black and her mom is Hispanic, and was told that she shouldn't sing from The Wiz. Well, if not her, who? And so my response to that was, not only should she sing it, but we need to teach our wonderful blonde-haired, blue-eyed diva over here who can sing everything. We need to teach her how to be able to interpret story in that same way. This is not about a color. This is about being able to interpret a conversation. August Wilson, that's one extreme, right? But The Wiz is another. Mm-hmm. Is making fragile, particularly cisgendered white men, in the performing arts, in arts disciplines in general, is making them feel comfortable enough to first say, the real problem is that I have a bias here and that I'm afraid that I'm going to get in trouble. Great. Now we're all on the same playing field.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that most days when I come here.
Right.
That if I say the wrong thing, if I do the wrong thing, not only will I have this stain or judgment, right, that permeates through a department, but then I'm also quickly going to have some kind of file created about me, even if it doesn't go anywhere. That is still going to live, that I shamed a student or that I did this, when the truth is, I actually just told you the truth. And I told you the truth in a loving way, and maybe you're not used to that, but this is not high school junior, that this is higher education. This is a university, right? Our job is to prepare you to go out into a world that is fraught with oppressive systems and help you navigate those systems and achieve some margin of success. And then the last thing I want to say specifically about policy is what happened at Cal State was one of wonderful thought leaders, Dr. Bonnie. She gathered Black faculty together, and for 5 meetings, we met, we talked, we scrutinized, and we tried to come up with a beginning step as it concerned the tenure process and this idea of not only invisible labor, but the explicit representation of cultural taxation. The caveat was this. Sure, her caveat, I'd love to bring y'all together, but I'm not doing it if they don't pay us. Now, that changes everything. We showed up, we were on time, and we were ready to work. Because now you're paying me for not only my thought, not only my intelligence around this experience, but as David said, my daily lived experience, and I cannot offer you any kind of, I can't offer you any solutions that are not also based in that which is academic, but more importantly, that which is lived. This is my experience. And I put this in my tenure file, and they told me that I was not a satisfactory teacher because I had been evaluated by students that did not like my policies in my classroom. That does not make a poor individual. But how do I share that unless I tell you this was my experience, and me telling you is making me experience it again, so at least I know I'm gonna get some money out of it, right?
Yeah.
That has to happen. You have to pay Gwen, and you have to pay Jeanmarie, you have to pay David to get in the space and relive those experiences as they're helping you rebuild a system that you don't want to really repair anyway. Let's just be honest. They really don't want to make the changes. To make those changes cost too much money. They don't want to.
And they don't seem possible. They don't seem possible.
That's exactly it.
I have a few solutions that I wrote down because believe it or not, we have 10 minutes left. And I'm just going to throw these out there and see if you guys have any other thoughts. And I feel like this conversation needs to continue. And there's a lot more threads of it that can go in lots of different directions. But my first idea is that we pay non-male and people of color the same as white men and make salaries public. That is first, like pay me what my colleagues are making. Yes, I have to have a side hustle to afford my job, and that is the truth. So I think we need to define emotional and invisible labor. And I know that's probably more committee work, but I feel like we shouldn't penalize people for not doing it, but we should definitely reward people for doing it. Right. And maybe it's about rebranding tenure, where service, teaching, and other invisible labor is credited, right? And time to recognize the crucial elements that the people who do that invisible labor, what they add to the academic institution, right? And then my final solution is mandatory training for white male academics, period. Every white male on every campus has to take training. Period.
Yeah, I mean, I think um, I'm with all of it, and I think the one that really stood out to me is the tenure process, right? Really, and to me, that's also a policy thing, right? Sort of, you're getting into the one of the foundational bricks of this system, and you're saying, okay, this brick that's been the linchpin of everything.
Mm.
That out and let's replace it with something better, something more equitable, right? And I think that's yes. And that one of the things that I wrote, and I'm glad you said it, making uh, salaries public. I wrote here earlier receipts, right? Making salaries public, making complaints, some sort of database where everyone can see the complaints, the student complaints lodged at cisgendered white faculty versus the complaints that are lodged at women faculty, faculty of color, queer faculty, so that not only the powers that be, or not only the academics or the researchers in the room have this data to then write an article about, but everybody can see, oh, this is a thing. Because I think sometimes what this conversation becomes is like, oh, okay, these people know that it's a thing. And everyone else, right, everyone else in the world is like, oh, I didn't, that's a thing? Oh. And I think when you have receipts, when you make the things public, it's hard to it's hard to shy away from that. It's hard to not see that, especially when you have the receipts and then you have a committee of people saying, "Here are the receipts. Let me."
I would add to that. I would actually not maybe add to it, but just sort of support that by saying that there's something that chairs can do when faculty of color have an inordinate amount of complaints. First of all, to recognize that the more service you do and the more care work related service that you do, and the more invisible care work service that you do as a person of color or a woman, the more dangerous it is for you in terms of putting yourself out there. So a lot of the success of folks who don't do that is because they close themselves off as humans because it's safer that way. It's just like middle school, right? Like it's like, like everyone needs to protect themselves. But as a chair, if there is something that is in the file, deans are really busy. And so that dean is going to look at what that chair says. And if that chair says, this happened, let me contextualize this for you. And then give the actual, cite some research about it, say, yes, this person did too much service. We're working on it. Yes, this person had negative course evaluations. That's due to this transition that's happening in their program or something like that. And then amplify their research contributions, talk about their student successes, because deans don't want to get in the weeds with you about this. They just want to say, oh, okay, meets expectations, great, check. Because they're so busy. I know that sounds flippant, but that's been my experience, is like, do the work so that the people who then get the tenure file next don't have to.
Well, and as somebody who's had to defend myself consistently for the last 20 years, like why you having a chair like you, Jeanmarie, who would protect the faculty member from the accusations from the students, like so that you would see them and understand that they are, that I'm not anti-white. I'm just trying to educate about diversity, right? And to dismiss that and protect the faculty instead of making me defend myself and write an answer, which is what I had to do. I had to write a thing that went in my file.
It's just hard to cancel people across the table from each other with like a cup of tea and some cookies. Like that's just not, it's harder. It's just harder because it's like, oh, it's a person. sitting
Yep.
across from me.
Yep.
I know we're about to end, but I think the other side of that is to remind, particularly, our white male colleagues, I'm not pointing a finger at you. I'm not. What I'm doing is reminding you that you benefit in ways that anyone on this screen will never, ever benefit from the systems that determine somebody's effectiveness as an educator. And I don't care what level that, and I have taught from elementary all the way to high school, and it's been the same at every level. At every level, it's been the same. And then what they have to then realize is that experience then follows us into the industry. We fight the same fight as full-time professional performers, be it at a community theater or on Broadway. And we've done it all. That it's the exact same fight. I'm not pointing my finger at you. I'm reminding you that you are born into a system that supports you, regardless of your ability, your expertise, or the mistakes that you have made, as we see happening clearly right now, that you are still entitled in a way that the folks on this screen and the folks that the communities we represent do not, will not, cannot ever be. And it's important for chairs and deans to think about that before they make decisions about somebody's ability. Nobody goes to school all the years that we've all gone to school to get to a university in a so-called tenured position and be told that you're less than satisfactory because your student surveys came back and they were below 70%. Who does that? No, we don't get paid enough to deal with that. And so all of that to say, it goes back to the policies and the means by which we are evaluated that are only based on our responsibilities and not what you think. Because people think, go see Marty. Yeah, Marty, I'm sending somebody over. We read Slave Play and they're just well, you need to handle that because you shouldn't have been reading that without getting your own education about that. So now you deal with it because you created that environment and you operated freely because you knew the system would support that and there wouldn't be any consequences. Right. I cannot even bring ragtime into the classroom without having a whole conversation about the use of the N-word. And then when they're like, we should do ragtime, I was like, well, I'm not doing it if you're not going to leave the language in it. Well, isn't that what it's about? It actually is a mirror for you. It's the story. It's really not for me to tell the story. It's actually for you to come and watch it. So you can be reminded of where we are headed if we don't begin to put it on paper, put it in policy, and have open conversation.
I think that is a perfect place to wrap it up. Jeanmarie, do you want to?
No, I just wanted to say another sort of incentive for everyone on a faculty is that in my experience, regardless of the way you identify or your gender or any kind of status, anti-racist, feminist, LGBTQ allied faculty it's more fun. It's more exciting. You're throwing yourself into scary things with other people who care about the same things. Be that person, maybe on the side, maybe as someone who's, and just get in the mix because the students see it.
Mm-hmm.
And they will respect you and they will be excited that you're part of the conversation. There's a lot of reward for letting your guard down and doing this work alongside your colleagues who are bearing a lot of the labor for, making change in this arena.
Yes.
End of speech, sorry.
No.
It's more fun. Yeah, it's more fun to be, anti-racist and feminist and, all the things, right?
Well, and when more people are included, we make better work,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate all of your hearts and brilliance today. Thank you, my friends, for joining me today for our MTEA DEI focus group series. This will be put up on our YouTube channel and on the MTEA website for people to view. And I will be in contact with you people about continuing this very important conversation. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your wisdom and for teaching me today.
Same.
Thank you.
Be well, my
Bless
friend. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
you.